I knew something was wrong the day Caroline brought over homemade lasagna and casually mentioned that my husband preferred his coffee black with 2 sugars. It was such a small thing, insignificant really, the kind of detail you'd never think twice about in normal circumstances. But I'd been married to David for 11 years, and in all that time, he'd never drunk his coffee with sugar. He was a purist about it. Black, no sugar, no cream. He'd lecture anyone who'd listen about how adding sweetener ruined the flavor profile. So when Caroline stood in my doorway on that gray October morning, her perfectly white smile gleaming as she handed me the dish and made that comment, something cold slithered down my spine. "Oh, I think you're mistaken," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "David drinks his coffee black, always has." Caroline's smile didn't falter, but something flickered in her eyes. A calculation. A moment of realization that she'd said something she shouldn't have. "Oh, of course," she said quickly. "I must be thinking of someone else. You know how it is. All these neighborhood coffee mornings blend together, but we'd never had neighborhood coffee mornings. And Caroline had only moved in next door 8 months ago." I thanked her for the lasagna and closed the door. Standing in my foyer with the warm dish in my hands and a growing sense of unease in my chest. How did Caroline know anything about how David took his coffee? When had she even seen him drink coffee? I told myself I was being paranoid. David worked from home 3 days a week. Caroline was a freelance graphic designer who also worked from home. They were probably just friendly neighbors who'd chatted over the fence or bumped into each other getting the mail. It was nothing, but I couldn't shake the feeling that it was something. Over the next few weeks, I started paying attention. Really paying attention. To Caroline, to David, to the small details I'd been too busy or too trusting to notice before. Caroline was beautiful in that effortless way some women are. Mid-30s, like me, but she had the kind of natural grace that made her look younger. Long blonde hair that always seemed perfectly tousled. A figure that suggested regular yoga and green smoothies. She wore flowing sundresses even as the weather turned cold. And she had this laugh, this bright, musical laugh that carried across yards and through windows. David had mentioned her a few times. "The new neighbor seems nice," he'd said when she first moved in. "Very friendly." Nothing that raised red flags. Nothing that suggested anything beyond neighborly politeness. But now I started noticing other things. Like how David always seemed to be outside when Caroline was getting her mail. How he'd volunteer to take out the trash or check the mailbox at times that coincidentally aligned with when she was outside watering her flowers. How he'd started dressing a little nicer on the days he worked from home, trading his usual sweatpants for jeans, actually combing his hair. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was creating a problem where none existed. David loved me. We had a good marriage, solid, boring sometimes maybe, but stable. We'd weathered the hard years, his mother's death, my miscarriage, his job loss 3 years ago. We'd come through it all together. But then Caroline brought over banana bread, and she mentioned that David must be feeling better after his back pain last week. I hadn't known David had back pain last week. "Oh, he didn't mention it," Caroline said when she saw my confusion. "I saw him stretching outside the other day and asked if he was okay. He said his back was acting up. I recommended my chiropractor." She smiled that perfect smile. "You know how men are, never want to admit when something's bothering them." I smiled back, wooden and fake. Yeah, that sounds like David. But my mind was racing. David hadn't mentioned back pain, hadn't mentioned seeing Caroline, hadn't mentioned any of it. Why? That night I watched him more carefully, the way he checked his phone and quickly turned the screen away. The way he said he needed to run to the store for milk, even though we had a full gallon in the fridge. The way he came back 45 minutes later with the milk and a strange energy about him. Nervous, guilty, like a teenager who'd just gotten away with something. "Long line?" I asked casually. "What? Oh, yeah, the store was packed." But I'd driven past that store on my way home from work. The parking lot had been nearly empty. I started checking his phone when he was in the shower. I felt horrible about it. Invasive and paranoid and like the kind of wife I'd never wanted to be. But I needed to know. I needed to understand why Caroline knew things about my husband that I didn't. His phone was clean, no suspicious texts, no dating apps, no obvious evidence of anything. But there was a messaging app I didn't recognize, and when I tried to open it, it required a password. Why did my husband have a password-protected messaging app on his phone? I confronted him that night. Tried to, anyway. "David, can we talk?" He looked up from his laptop, distracted. "Sure, babe, what's up?" "Caroline stopped by again today." "Oh yeah? That's nice. She seems like a good neighbor. She mentioned your back pain." He didn't even flinch. "Oh right, it was nothing, just slept wrong. Why didn't you mention it to me?" He shrugged. "I don't know, it wasn't a big deal. Why?" "She seems to know a lot about you." "Who, Caroline?" He laughed. "She's just friendly. We're neighbors, Jess. We chat sometimes. It's normal." "How often do you chat?" Now he looked at me, really looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I didn't like. Defensiveness. Maybe anger. "What are you asking me, Jess?" "I'm asking how often you talk to Caroline." "I don't know, sometimes, when we're both outside." "Why are you making this into something weird?" "I'm not making it weird. I'm just trying to understand why she knows how you take your coffee, and I'm just finding out you had back pain." Jesus Christ. He closed his laptop. "Are you serious right now? Are you actually accusing me of something because I talked to our neighbor?" "I'm not accusing you of anything. I'm just asking. You're acting crazy, Jess. Paranoid. Caroline is a nice woman who happens to live next door. We make small talk. That's it. If you have a problem with that, that's your issue, not mine." He stood up, grabbed his laptop, and walked upstairs to our bedroom, leaving me sitting in the living room feeling small and foolish and angry all at once. Maybe he was right. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe I was creating drama where none existed because our marriage had gotten stale, and I needed something to feel passionate about, even if that passion was suspicion. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. 2 weeks later, I came home from work early. I'd had a headache all day, and my boss told me to take the afternoon off. I pulled into our driveway at 2:30 in the afternoon and saw David's car in the garage. Good, he was home. Maybe we could talk, really talk, about what was going on with us. I walked into the house and heard voices, low, murmured conversation coming from the kitchen. I walked quietly down the hall and stopped just before the doorway. David's voice. "We have to be more careful." Caroline's voice. "I know. I'm sorry about the coffee thing. It just slipped out." My heart stopped. Actually stopped beating for what felt like a full minute. "She's getting suspicious," David said. "We should cool it for a while." "I don't want to cool it," Caroline said, and her voice had a pouty quality to it that made my skin crawl. "I miss you when we're not together. I miss you too, but we can't risk." I walked into the kitchen. They were standing by the counter, not touching but close, too close. Caroline was holding a coffee mug, my favorite mug, the one with the chipped handle that I'd had since college. David was leaning against the counter in a way that was too casual, too intimate. They both turned when they saw me. The guilt on their faces was so obvious it was almost comical. "Jess," David said, and his voice cracked on my name. "You're home early." "Clearly," I said. My voice sounded strange, detached, like it was coming from someone else's body. Caroline set down the mug. "I should go." "No," I said. "Stay. I think we should all talk, don't you?" She looked at David. He looked at the floor. "How long?" I asked. The question came out steady, controlled. I was proud of that. Proud that I wasn't screaming or crying or falling apart. "Jess," David started. "How long?" 6 months, Caroline said. Her voice was quiet. At least she had the decency to sound ashamed. 6 months. Half a year. While I was going to work every day, coming home, making dinner, watching TV with my husband, making love to him, planning our anniversary trip, he'd been sleeping with our neighbor. "In our house?" I asked. David nodded, barely, just a tiny movement of his head. "Where?" "Jess, please." "Where, David? Where in my house have you been fucking her?" The words felt foreign in my mouth. I never swore, never yelled. But now I wanted to scream, wanted to break things, wanted to hurt them the way they'd hurt me. "The guest room," he whispered, "when you were at work. The guest room. The room where my mother stayed when she visited. The room where my best friend Sarah slept when she came for girls' weekends. They'd been in that room, in that bed, betraying me. "I need you both to leave," I said. "Right now. Get out of my house." "This is my house too," David said. "I don't care. Get out." Caroline moved first, practically running for the door. David hesitated. "Jess, we need to talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about. You've been cheating on me for 6 months with our neighbor, in our home, in our bed." "Not our bed," he said like that mattered. "Never our bed." "Oh, well, that makes it so much better. Thank you for that consideration, David. Thank you for respecting our marriage enough not to fuck her in our bed." He flinched. "I never wanted to hurt you." "Then why did you do it?" "I don't know," he said helplessly. "It just happened. Caroline and I started talking and she was so easy to talk to, and you were always so busy with work and don't you dare blame this on me," I said, and now my voice was shaking. "Don't you dare make this my fault because I have a job." "I'm not. I'm just saying, we grew apart. You have to admit that. We haven't really been happy for a while." "I was happy," I said. "I was happy with our life, with you. Maybe it wasn't perfect. Maybe it wasn't exciting, but I was happy. And I was faithful. I didn't go looking for excitement in someone else's bed." "It wasn't just about sex," he said. "Caroline and I have a connection, real feelings. And that, somehow, was worse than anything else he could have said. If it had been just sex, just a physical mistake, maybe we could have worked through it. But feelings, love, that meant this wasn't a mistake. It was a choice. He'd chosen her over me. "Get out," I whispered. "Please, just get out." He left. I heard his car start, heard him drive away, and then I was alone in my house, our house, surrounded by all the normal things of our normal life, and I fell to my knees in the kitchen and sobbed. The next few weeks were a blur of lawyers and paperwork and moving boxes. David moved in with his brother. Caroline avoided me completely, never outside when I was, never answering when I knocked on her door. I wanted to confront her, wanted to scream at her, tell her exactly what I thought of women who slept with married men. But what was the point? She knew what she'd done. They both did. My friends rallied around me. Sarah came and stayed for a week, helping me pack David's things, letting me cry on her shoulder, threatening to key his car. My sister called every day. My mom wanted to drive down, but I told her I needed to handle this myself. Everyone told me the same things. He wasn't worth it. I deserved better. I'd find someone new. It would get easier with time. But none of that helped when I was lying in bed at night, alone, wondering what I'd done wrong, why I hadn't been enough, why he'd chosen her. I started therapy. Dr. Martinez was kind and patient and asked me questions I didn't want to answer, like whether I'd seen signs earlier that I'd chosen to ignore, whether our marriage had really been as solid as I thought, whether I'd been truly happy or just comfortable. "There's a difference," she said gently, "between being happy and being afraid to rock the boat." I thought about that a lot. Had I been happy, or had I just been going through the motions, convincing myself that this was what marriage looked like, routine and comfortable and safe? But even if that was true, it didn't excuse what David did. It didn't justify his betrayal. 3 months after I kicked him out, the divorce was finalized. We split everything 50-50. The house had to be sold. Neither of us could afford it on our own. I moved into a small apartment across town. David moved in with Caroline. That hurt more than I expected. The speed of it, the ease with which he transitioned from our life together to a new life with her, like I'd been so easy to replace. I saw them sometimes, around town, at the grocery store, once at a restaurant where I was having dinner with Sarah. They looked happy, genuinely happy, laughing together, holding hands, completely absorbed in each other. And I hated them for it. Hated that they got to be happy while I was still picking up the pieces of my shattered life. But slowly, very slowly, things got better. I threw myself into work, got promoted, started taking a pottery class on weekends, made new friends, went on some dates, though none of them went anywhere. I was rebuilding. It wasn't fast, it wasn't easy, but I was doing it. 1 year after the divorce, I ran into Caroline at a coffee shop. I almost left when I saw her, but something made me stay. Maybe curiosity, maybe closure. She saw me and froze. For a moment, I thought she'd leave. But then she walked over to my table. "Can I sit?" she asked. I should have said no. Should have told her to go to hell. But I gestured to the empty chair. She sat down, clutching her cup like a lifeline. "I owe you an apology," she said. "Yes, you do. What David and I did, what I did, was inexcusable. You were nothing but kind to me, and I repaid that by sleeping with your husband. In your home. I don't expect you to forgive me. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry." "Are you still with him?" I asked. She nodded. "We're engaged, actually." That stung. I won't pretend it didn't. "Are you happy?" "I am," she said quietly. "But I hate that my happiness came at your expense. I hate that I hurt you. If I could go back and do things differently." "But you can't," I interrupted. "None of us can. What's done is done." "I know." We sat in silence for a moment. Then I asked the question that had been haunting me for a year. "Why? Why did you pursue him? You knew he was married. You knew it would destroy his marriage, destroy me. Why did you do it?" She was quiet for a long time. Then, "Because he was unhappy. I could see it. The way he'd look at your house like it was a prison. The way he'd stay outside as long as possible before going in. And I was lonely. And we started talking, and it felt good. And then it felt like more than good. And by the time I realized how far we'd gone, I didn't want to stop. I'm not proud of that. I'm not trying to excuse it. But you asked why, and that's why. He told me he was happy," I said. "All those years. He said he loved our life together. Maybe he thought he did. Or maybe he was lying to himself as much as he was lying to you." I thought about that. About the difference between what people say and what they feel. About how you can live with someone for years and never truly know them. "I should hate you," I said. "You should. But I don't think I do anymore. I think I'm just tired. Tired of being angry. Tired of letting this consume me." "You're a better person than I am," Caroline said. "No," I said, standing up. "I'm just choosing not to let you have any more of my energy. You and David took enough from me. I'm not giving you anything else." I left her sitting there and walked out into the sunshine, and for the first time in a year, I felt light. 2 years after the divorce, I met someone. His name was Michael, and he was kind and funny and nothing like David. He made me laugh. He was honest, almost to a fault. He'd been through his own divorce and understood the baggage I carried. We took things slow. I was guarded, careful, afraid of being hurt again. But Michael was patient. He didn't push. He just showed up, consistently, honestly, and let me learn to trust again in my own time. 3 years after the divorce, I heard through mutual friends that David and Caroline had broken up. Apparently, once the thrill of the affair wore off, they realized they didn't actually have that much in common. The connection that seemed so real, so worth destroying a marriage for, turned out to be mostly built on secrecy and excitement. I wish I could say I felt vindicated, that I took pleasure in their breakup, but I didn't. I just felt sad. Sad that so much pain and destruction had led to nothing, that our marriage had been collateral damage in a relationship that didn't even last. But their breakup didn't change my life. I was with Michael now, building something new, something honest. 4 years after the divorce, Michael proposed. We were on a hiking trail, nowhere fancy or elaborate, just the two of us and the mountains and the sky. He got down on one knee and asked me to marry him, and I said yes, without hesitation. This time, I knew what I was getting into. I knew that marriage wasn't a fairy tale, that it required work and honesty and choosing each other every single day. I knew that people could change, could grow apart, could betray you in ways you never saw coming. But I also knew that Michael wasn't David, that our relationship was built on truth, not convenience, that we'd both been through hell and come out the other side, and we chose to face the future together with our eyes wide open. The wedding was small, just close friends and family. Sarah was my maid of honor. My sister cried through the whole ceremony. My mom told me she was proud of how strong I'd become. David wasn't there, of course. I hadn't spoken to him in years. I'd heard he'd moved to another state, started over somewhere new. I hoped he was doing okay. I really did. Not for his sake, but for mine. Because holding on to anger and bitterness would only poison my own happiness. 5 years after the divorce, Michael and I bought a house. Not the house David and I had shared. I'd never go back to that neighborhood. Never risk running into Caroline again. But a new house, in a new town, where we could write our own story. I thought about that day a lot. The day Caroline brought over lasagna and mentioned David's coffee. The moment that made me start paying attention. And I wondered what would have happened if she hadn't slipped up. Would David and I still be together, pretending to be happy while slowly dying inside? Would the affair have continued indefinitely? Would I have ever known? Part of me wished I'd never found out, that I could have lived in ignorant bliss, believing in a marriage that was already broken. But a bigger part of me was grateful. Grateful that I'd been forced to confront the truth, that I'd been given the chance to rebuild my life into something real and honest and good. Caroline had done me a favor, in the end. Not intentionally, not kindly, but by destroying my marriage, she'd freed me to find something better. I never saw her again after that day in the coffee shop. I heard she moved away too, leaving behind the neighborhood where she'd once played the role of the friendly neighbor who knew too much. Sometimes I drive past our old street. The house is painted a different color now. Different people live there, with different dreams and different secrets. I wonder if they're happy. I wonder if they know the history of that place, the betrayal that happened within those walls. But mostly, I don't think about it anymore. David and Caroline and that whole painful chapter of my life, they're in the past. They're part of my story, but they're not the ending. The ending is this. Me and Michael in our kitchen on the Sunday morning, making breakfast together, laughing about something stupid, planning our week. The ending is knowing that I'm loved by someone who chooses me every day, honestly and completely. The ending is understanding that betrayal didn't break me. It taught me what I truly deserved. And what I deserved was so much more than a man who needed a neighbor's smile to feel alive. 6 years after the divorce, I'm sitting in my therapist's office for what Dr. Martinez says might be our last session. You've come so far, she tells me. When you first came to me, you were drowning in grief and anger. Now look at you. You're thriving. I don't feel like I'm thriving, I admit. Some days I still wonder what I could have done differently. If I'd paid more attention, been more present, been more enough. You were always enough, Jess. David's choices weren't about your value. They were about his own struggles, his own weaknesses. You understand that now, don't you? I nod slowly. Intellectually, yes. But emotionally, it's harder. That's normal. Betrayal leaves scars. But scars are just proof that you survived something that tried to destroy you. They're evidence of your strength, not your weakness. I leave her office feeling lighter. Not healed. I don't know if anyone fully heals from betrayal, but better, stronger. More myself than I've been in years. That night, Michael and I are watching a movie when his phone buzzes. He picks it up, checks it, and sets it back down without hiding the screen. Such a small gesture. But after years with someone who guarded his phone like it contained state secrets, Michael's transparency still takes my breath away. Everything okay, I ask? Just work stuff, nothing urgent. I believe him, and that trust, hard-won and carefully rebuilt, feels like the greatest gift I could ever receive. Later, lying in bed, Michael asks me something he's never asked before. Do you ever wonder about him? About David? I think about it. Really think about it. Sometimes, I admit, I wonder if he's happy, if he regrets what he did, if he ever thinks about me. And it doesn't matter. Whatever he feels, whatever his life looks like now, it doesn't affect mine. He's a character in a story I've finished reading. I'm on to the next chapter now. Michael pulls me closer. I'm glad I get to be in your next chapter. Me too. 7 years after the divorce, I get an unexpected message on social media. From David. I stare at the notification for a full minute before opening it. Jess, I know I have no right to reach out to you. I know you probably don't want to hear from me. But I've been in therapy, working on myself, and my therapist suggested I might find closure by apologizing to the people I've hurt. You're at the top of that list. What I did to you was unforgivable. I was selfish and cowardly, and I destroyed something good because I was too afraid to be honest about who I was and what I needed. You deserve so much better. You deserved honesty and respect and fidelity. I can't undo the pain I caused you. but I want you to know that I'm sorry. Truly, deeply sorry. I hope you found happiness. I hope your life is everything you wanted it to be. You deserve that, and so much more. I read the message 3 times. Then I show it to Michael. What are you going to say? He asks. I don't know. Part of me wants to ignore it. Part of me wants to tell him to go to hell. Part of me wants to accept the apology and move on. What does your gut say? I close my eyes and listen to that inner voice that had tried to warn me about Caroline, that had known something was wrong before my brain caught up. My gut says he means it, that he really is sorry, but also that his apology is more for him than for me. He wants absolution. He wants to feel like a good person who's grown and changed. And I'm not obligated to give him that. No, you're not. In the end, I write a simple response. Thank you for the apology. I hope you found peace. I have. I don't tell him about Michael. Don't tell him about the life I've built. Don't give him any details that might make him feel better or worse about what he destroyed. Because this isn't about him anymore. It stopped being about him a long time ago. 8 years after the divorce, I'm truly happy. Not the fake happiness I convinced myself I had with David, but real, genuine, bone-deep happiness. The kind that comes from knowing yourself, accepting your past, and building a future on a foundation of truth. I think about Caroline sometimes, wonder where she is, what she's doing, whether she learned anything from our mutual destruction, whether she still smiles that perfect smile while knowing too much about other people's husbands. But mostly, I think about the woman I've become. Stronger, wiser, more cautious, yes, but also more open, more willing to trust, but better at recognizing when that trust is misplaced. I think about all the women who've been where I was, blindsided by betrayal, destroyed by someone who promised forever. And I want to tell them what I learned, that you will survive this, that the pain that feels like it will kill you will eventually fade to a dull ache, and then to a memory, and then to just another part of your story. I want to tell them that betrayal reveals character, both the person who betrays you and your own, that how you handle the aftermath matters more than what caused it, that choosing to rebuild takes more courage than staying broken. I want to tell them that happiness is possible again. Different happiness, maybe. More complicated. More earned. But real. The neighbor who always smiled did know too much about my husband. She knew things I didn't know, saw things I didn't see. And for a long time, I hated her for it. Hated her smile, her perfect hair, her casual destruction of my life. But now, years later, I understand that Caroline didn't destroy my life. My marriage was already crumbling. I just couldn't see it. She was the catalyst, not the cause. And while her methods were despicable, her betrayal unforgivable, she ultimately set me free from a life that was slowly suffocating me. So when I think about that October morning, the lasagna, the comment about coffee, I don't feel rage anymore. I feel something closer to gratitude, complicated, reluctant gratitude for the painful gift of truth. Because the truth, no matter how much it hurts, is always better than a beautiful lie. And my life now, built on truth and trust and hard-won wisdom, is more beautiful than any lie could ever be.